right. Hello. Eighth grade, we're back with our final chapter of A Mighty Long Way, chapter 17. Let's take a look at the homework before we dive into the reading. Chapter 17 runs from pages 265 to 274. Just give me a couple of bullet points for gist statement here, and we have one question. One final question to wrap up the entire anchor text. Carlotta writes on page 272. What a long journey it had been from Little Rock and Central to this moment, referring to the election of Barack Obama. How would you describe the journey from the 13th Amendment to the election of an African American president? So make certain when you get to page 272 that you're annotating for the correct response to this question. Here we go. Chapter 17, Touching the Future. Wherever I go to talk to students, I usually encounter some who know little or nothing about the Little Rock Nine. Sometimes they're African American. Sometimes they're white, Latino, or Asian. But when they hear my story, often they get angry, like the white kid whose hand went up slowly in the back of the room after my first speech at Ponderosa High School in a Denver suburb many years ago. Why am I just learning this? He asks. Why haven't I learned this in school before now? I hear that often from high school and college students who feel their school systems and parents neglected to share important pieces of American history. I don't blame the children for not knowing. I blame the parents and schools. I bear some responsibility as part of a generation that I don't believe has done enough to ensure that our children and their children know and fully appreciate our collective history, particularly the hard fought battles of the 1950s and 1960s for African Americans to gain full access to educational opportunities and civil rights. It distresses me to see that the nation's public schools have largely become resegregated, but even more, I'm disturbed by the low regard for education in many of these schools. I didn't go to Central because I felt a strong desire to sit next to white people in class. I put my life on the line because I believe Central offered the best academic opportunities. I had hoped that the resulting interaction with people of another race would be a bonus. A great exchange of cultures and ideas. It is hurtful now when I hear that in many urban schools where the student populations tend to be overwhelmingly black, it is not considered cool to be smart. It makes me downright angry when I hear that smart black kids often feel a need to play down their brain power just to fit in. How did we, particularly black men and women who endured the struggle and benefited from it, allow such a cultural shift from the time when education was widely viewed in our community as the way to a better life? Entertainer Bill Cosby was severely criticized by some black scholars and activists for comments he made in 2004 on the 50th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education about the decline in parenting and personal responsibility in poor black communities. But I think he was onto something. Many of the problems that we see today, such as single mothers, deadbeat fathers, and extreme poverty, are not new. They are as old as people, but there was a sense in my day that the fate of black people, poor or not, was collective. Thus, our standards were defined by the best among us, not the worst. Our parents, whether daddy was living at home or not, our grandparents, our teachers, and all of the adults in our realm of influence held us to high expectations at home, at school, and in the community. While the problems that plague the poorest among us today, rampant crime, poor education, and broken families, are indeed multidimensional, I believe strongly that better parenting and greater outreach from those of us in a position to help can go a long way toward restoring education to its vaunted place. So too can efforts to reconnect students to their history. In recent years, the federal government, the state of Arkansas, and some respected artists have taken their great strides to make the historic history of the Little Rock Nine more tangible. For the 50th anniversary in 2007, the National Park Service constructed a powerful new multimedia exhibit just across the street from Central High School. The high-tech building features a photo gallery with black and white images from 1957. Film footage from that year also runs constantly on large television screens posted throughout. Visitors can pick up telephones and hear my comrades and me sharing parts of our story. They can hear old recorded interviews of Governor Favis and Gazette editor Harry Ashmore and more. Park rangers, including Minnie Jean's daughter, Spirit Tricky, share what happened inside the walls of Central as they guide guests on tours of the school. Some parts of the exhibit are still tough for me to see and hear, but that just speaks to its power. Another touching monument of the nine of us stands on the north end of the Arkansas State Capitol. Life-size bronze statues capture each of us as the children we were then in a memorial simply called Testament. Editorial cartoonist John Deering and his wife Kathy spent 7 years bringing his idea to fruition after getting permission from the Little Rock Nine Foundation. When it was unveiled on August 30th, 2005, it was the largest bronze statue in Arkansas and the first monument honoring the civil rights movement on the grounds of a Southern State Capitol building. State lawmakers not only agreed to pay the bulk of the cost to finance the memorial, they also agreed to locate it on the Capitol grounds within view of the governor's office. That made me proud. I like to think that whatever the Arkansas governor has to sign a bill, especially education or human rights legislation, he will think twice about his actions when he glances out his window. There we are, nine bronze statues staring back at him in a silent testament to history. These days, I am inspired by the hope and optimism I feel in the air, motivated mostly by the successful campaign of President Barack Obama. If nothing else, the high visibility of the new first family, our smart and eloquent president, his equally intelligent and charming wife, both committed to their two beautiful daughters, will have a lasting positive impact on the psyche of Black people everywhere. The Obamas are bound to transform not only how Black people see ourselves collectively, but how others see us. It was a proud day in America, one I admit I did not see coming. I was in the crowd in Denver's Mile High Stadium that night in August 2008 when then Senator Obama accepted the Democratic nomination for president. It marked the first time that an African American had headed the ticket of a major party for the nation's highest political office. The crowd of 84,000 supporters, an amalgam of people representing the country's diversity, was absolutely ecstatic. From my spot in the crowd, I soaked up every bit of this historic moment. The faces, the cheers, the energy, the joy, the hope for this young man who looked like me. I had seen this country at its worst, and now I was able to see and touch the monumental change unfolding before me. I stand before you tonight because all across America something is stirring, Obama said as the crowd roared its approval. Fireworks shot up into the clear dark night. Confetti rained down over us all. Something was stirring indeed. I had been late to get on the Obama bandwagon. Hillary Clinton was my candidate. I had known her personally since that evening. My Little Rock comrades and I chatted the night away with her and then Governor Bill Clinton at the Arkansas Governor's Mansion in September 1987. When I made it back to Denver, I told my husband that Governor Clinton was considering a run for the White House. What do you think of him? Ike asked. I like him. He's smart, I responded, but the smartest one is his wife. That's how I truly felt about her. But I also believed her to be genuine, experienced politically, a good manager, and a tough woman capable of making the difficult decisions that would be needed down the road. I had nothing against Obama. I just thought Hillary was the better, more experienced candidate. The color of a candidate's skin had never been and would not be this time the driving factor in how I voted. I've always voted my conscience. But Obama had tapped into something that Hillary just couldn't overcome, the overwhelming desire for change. When it became clear to me that Hillary was in trouble, I began listening to Obama with a more willing ear. I watched him on the campaign trail and in the debates and scoured the news coverage of his proposals for change. He was sounding all the right notes on the issues that matter a great deal to me, particularly healthcare, the war in Iraq, and the tanking economy. He came across as super smart and unflappable. The more I listened and learned, the more I liked him. When Hillary exited the race, I began volunteering for Obama's campaign in Denver and worked as hard for him as I had worked for her. But as proud as I was of Obama that night in Denver when he accepted the Democratic nomination, part of me was worried. I sat in the stadium, taking in every moment because I thought that would be the highlight, the most significant political moment I would ever witness. A black man accepting his party's nomination for president of the United States. Part of me was worried that Obama just couldn't win. I seen too much hate, the kind that had fueled the white mobs of my youth and then took Dr. King, the Kennedys, and those four little girls who died in the church bombing in Birmingham. I seen too the more subtle, but no less destructive racism and discrimination, the kind that flies below the radar and often makes the accuser seem paranoid, the kind that had forced my friend Horace Walker finally to give up his dream of earning a doctorate. The black man always has to do more, improve more, and more times than not, he still falls short in their eyes. Horace would say in his most frustrated moments. And this from a man who succeeded anyway, who through hard work and sheer determination rose to the ranks of vice president of two major corporations before his death in June 2001. I've seen a lot of good too, genuine colorblind goodness from white men and women who have been able to look me in the eyes and see me for what I am, a woman, a child of God, no more, no less. But in spite of the incredible hope I felt stirring across the country, I couldn't answer with certainty when I wondered, would enough white Americans really be able to pull the lever for a black man once they got in the privacy of the voting booth? Have the United States really come that far? And even if so, what new or old tricks would emerge to upset the will of the people? Would ballots suddenly turn up missing in key battleground states? Would the power brokers find some other way to disqualify or discredit him? On November 4th, election day, I arrived at Obama's Denver headquarters about 8:30 a.m. I spent the next 10 hours making telephone calls and running errands between headquarters and the polls. Soon after I arrived home and ate dinner, a friend called. I know you're going to stay up, she said excitedly. I wasn't. I figured the election would be too close to call that night, and I was planning to go to bed. I was tired and I admit nervous. I will have plenty of time in the morning to wait out the results. At least that's what I thought. But when I glanced at the television, I quickly got sucked into the election coverage. Before long, newscasters were announcing Obama victories in key states. When Ohio moved into the Obama column, my telephone rang. It was my comrade, Jefferson Thomas. I delivered my state, he said jubilantly. It's all over now. And then reporters announced Pennsylvania for Obama, too. I thought he could win. He could really win this. By 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, national newscasters had put Virginia, a Republican stronghold in presidential elections, and a hard-fought battleground this time around in the Obama column, too. He ultimately won my state, Colorado, as well. Things seemed to snowball after Virginia was announced. McCain conceded. President George Bush called to congratulate him. Obama supporters were gathering by the thousands in Grant Park in Chicago. Tears streamed down black faces, white faces, brown faces, cream faces. Jesse Jackson, who had been on the balcony with Dr. King when the fatal shots rang out, looked genuinely overcome with emotion. Strangers were hugging, horns were honking, Obama signs were flapping, black news reporters trained to maintain a poker face were choking up, talking about their own mothers, fathers, and grandparents. Before I could even process it all, My phone began ringing off the hook with calls from tearful peers, my sisters, mother. They all asked the same question, can you believe it? And then they said, I never thought I'd see this day. Even Whitney and Brooke, who had grown up in a much different world from mine, were surprised that Obama actually pulled off a victory. Ike and I were quiet and reflective, two children of the segregated South, perhaps still in a state of shock. Just before 10 p.m., MST, Obama took the stage with his wife and children. Even he seemed somewhat subdued and awed by the magnitude of it all. If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer. He was talking to me. The tears began welling inside. Yes, I had my answer. America had proven me wrong, or at least filled in the blank. We were indeed a country ready to move beyond its racial scars and wounds into a more hopeful future. What a long journey it had been from Little Rock and Central to this moment. When I climbed those steps at Central, flanked by federal troopers on that September morning more than 50 years ago, I was just a 14-year-old girl doing what felt right for me. In time, I would come to understand the greater good that my 8 comrades and I were helping to start a journey sure to outlast any of us. But even with that knowledge, I could not imagine a future as spectacular as this. I could not imagine that I would live to see an African American born of a black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas pick up that journey and chart it successfully all the way into the Oval Office. As I sat before the television watching news reports about the impromptu celebrations throughout the country, my shero, Rosa Parks, came to mind. With her quiet determination, she had shown me long ago what an ordinary woman could do. But like so many of the good soldiers who had marched out front, she had to witness this victory from heaven. I felt grateful to be alive. Now, nothing could stop the tears. That's the end of A Mighty Long Way, my journey to justice at Little Rock Central High. And we're going to continue this discussion in class tomorrow. Bye, class.